3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds for Alice's body to collide with Du Yun Kang's lap, and the entire VIP lounge went ice cold. No laughter, no clinking champagne flutes, no whispered conversations. Even the bass from the club downstairs seemed to disappear. Alice froze. She could feel the hard muscle of his thighs beneath her, the heat radiating through his expensive suit. But what really made her breath catch was his hand, tattooed fingers wrapping slowly, deliberately around her waist to steady her. Strange thing was, his grip wasn't rough. That thought terrified her even more. Du Yun Kang didn't move. No anger, no surprise, nothing. Just those coal-black eyes locked on her face like he was memorizing every detail, every bruise Mila's nails had left on her arms, every tear she'd been holding back for the past 6 hours. Alice's stomach twisted into knots. You know that feeling when you realize you've just walked into something way bigger than a cruel prank, that something has shifted and you can't go back? That's what slammed into her. Behind her, Mila's voice dripped with fake innocence. "Oops, my bad." Then came the flash of a phone camera. Multiple phones. Perfect. Now they had evidence. The trap Jax and Mila set had just snapped shut exactly like they planned. But here's what they didn't know. The man whose lap Alice was sitting on, he wasn't just some random VIP customer. And before I tell you what happens next, and trust me, Alice's entire life is about to flip upside down in ways she never saw coming, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single part of this story. 48 hours earlier. The foreclosure notice was printed on thick cream paper, like the bank wanted to make sure you really felt the weight of losing everything. Alice had been staring at it for 20 minutes, sitting in her rusty Honda in the mailbox parking lot 3 blocks from her house. The numbers swam in front of her eyes. $150,000. Due in full within 90 days, or the property at 2847 Maple Grove Avenue would be seized and auctioned. Her childhood home. The house where her mother had hung her kindergarten drawings on the fridge, where her father had taught her to ride a bike in the driveway before the cancer took him, where her mother now sat in her wheelchair, trusting that everything was fine. Alice's hands shook as she folded the notice and shoved it into her glove compartment, burying it under old napkins and a broken phone charger. Her mother couldn't see this, couldn't know. The medical bills had already broken her mother's spirit once. After the stroke 2 years ago, Alice had watched her mother cry over bills she couldn't pay, watched her try to sell her wedding ring, watched her apologize for being a burden. Alice had sworn then, never again. Her mother would never feel that shame again. So Alice had done what she had to do. She took out the loan against the house using her mother's power of attorney, telling herself it was temporary, just enough to cover the hospital bills, the physical therapy, the medications insurance wouldn't cover. She'd pay it back. She had a plan. But plans didn't account for interest rates that tripled overnight. Plans didn't account for the loan company selling her debt to a shadier company who sold it to an even shadier one. Plans definitely didn't account for her mother's new medication costing $800 a month. Alice pressed her forehead against the steering wheel. The vinyl was cracked and burning hot from the afternoon sun, but she didn't care. She needed the pain to ground her, to remind her this was real. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Did you remember to pick up my prescription? Love you, baby." Alice's throat tightened. The prescription. Right. Another $800 she didn't have. She typed back quickly, "Got it, Mom. Be home soon." Then she opened her banking app, watched the screen load, and felt her stomach drop. $127.43. That's what she had left until Friday. And Friday's paycheck was already spent. Rent for their converted garage apartment, utilities, groceries, gas. The prescription would wipe her out completely, which meant she'd have to skip meals again this week. She'd gotten good at that, good at pretending she'd eaten at work, good at making excuses about intermittent fasting or not being hungry. Her mother couldn't know about the weight Alice had lost, couldn't know about the nights Alice worked double shifts at the club, then came home and filled out loan applications that always got denied, couldn't know that her daughter was drowning. Alice started the car. The engine coughed twice before turning over, and she said a silent prayer it wouldn't die completely. She couldn't afford a repair, couldn't afford anything. She drove to the pharmacy on autopilot, her mind spinning through impossible math. If she picked up extra shifts at the club this week, maybe 4 doubles, that would be… No, still not enough. Even if she didn't eat, didn't sleep, worked herself to death, the numbers didn't work. $150,000. The amount kept echoing in her head like a death sentence. At the pharmacy counter, she handed over her mother's insurance card and her debit card, holding her breath as the machine processed. The pharmacist, a kind older woman named Betty who always remembered her, gave her a sympathetic smile. "Tough times, honey?" Betty asked softly. Alice forced a smile. "Nothing I can't handle." But as she walked out with the little white bag, past the other customers with their overflowing carts and designer purses, Alice felt something crack inside her chest. How many more days could she keep this up? How many more lies could she tell her mother while watching their entire world slip away? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Jax, her manager at the club. "Need you tonight, VIP section. Big tippers coming through. Don't be late." Alice closed her eyes. VIP section meant Mila would be there. Mila, who hated Alice for reasons Alice had never understood. Mila, who found new ways every shift to humiliate her, steal her tips, make her life hell. And Jax always let it happen because Mila was dating his cousin. But VIP section also meant money, maybe enough to buy herself a few more days before everything collapsed. Alice texted back, "I'll be there." She sat in her car outside the pharmacy and let herself have exactly 60 seconds. 60 seconds to feel the crushing weight of it all, to feel the fear and the exhaustion and the hopelessness, to imagine what it would be like to just give up, to walk away, to let someone else carry this impossible burden. 60 seconds. That's all she allowed herself. Then she wiped her eyes, checked her face in the rearview mirror, and drove home to lie to her mother about how good her day had been. If she'd known what was waiting for her at the club that night, what Mila and Jax had planned, what her life was about to become, well, maybe she would have stayed in that parking lot a little longer. The velvet room smelled like expensive cologne, spilled champagne, and desperation. Alice knew that smell by heart now. 6 months of working here, and it had seeped into her hair, her clothes, her skin. She clocked in at 7:47 p.m., already 13 minutes late because her car had stalled twice on the drive over. Jax was waiting for her by the staff lockers, arms crossed, that smile on his face that never reached his eyes. "You're late, Alice." "I know, I'm sorry, I don't care about your excuses." He stepped closer, and Alice instinctively stepped back. Jax was the kind of man who used his size to intimidate, who stood too close and spoke too quietly so you had to lean in to hear him. "You're lucky we need servers tonight. VIP section's yours, but one more screw-up and you're done. Understand?" Alice nodded, swallowing the anger that wanted to rise in her throat. She couldn't afford anger, couldn't afford pride. She needed this job. "Good. Now get out there. Table 7's been waiting." Alice grabbed her apron and rushed onto the floor. The club was already packed, bodies pressed against the bar, music pulsing through the speakers like a heartbeat. She wove through the crowd, tray balanced on her shoulder, and headed for the VIP section. That's when she saw Mila. She was standing at table 7, Alice's table, laughing with a group of men in tailored suits. Her blonde hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail, her dress so tight it looked painted on. When she saw Alice approaching, her smile sharpened. "Oh, Alice, there you are." Mila's voice dripped with fake sweetness. "These gentlemen were wondering where their server was. I told them you were probably in the bathroom fixing your hair or something." The men laughed. Alice felt heat crawl up her neck. "I can take it from here, Mila. Thanks." "Actually," Mila tilted her head, her smile never faltering, "Jax reassigned this table to me, said something about rewarding reliable servers. You understand, right?" Alice's jaw tightened. Table 7 was a six-top, and from the bottles they'd already ordered, she could see it was at least a $500 tab. That tip would have covered her gas for 2 weeks. "Jax assigned me to VIP section. And I'm in VIP section too, sweetie." Leaning in, her voice dropping low enough that only Alice could hear. "You really thought you were going to waltz in late and get the good tables. That's not how this works." Before Alice could respond, Mila turned back to the men, all smiles and charm. "Sorry about the confusion, gentlemen. Let me get you another round. On the house for the wait." Alice stood there, tray empty, watching Mila work her table. Her table. She wanted to scream, wanted to march over to Jax and demand answers, but she already knew how that would go. Jax would side with Mila. He always did. She forced herself to move, to find other tables, to salvage what she could of the night. But Mila wasn't done. Every time Alice approached a new table, Mila was somehow already there, laughing with the customers, taking their orders, pocketing tips that should have been Alice's. And when Alice finally managed to serve a table of businessmen near the back, when she brought them their drinks and they handed her a $50 tip, Mila appeared out of nowhere. "Oh, let me take that to the bar for you, Alice. You look exhausted." Before Alice could protest, Mila snatched the bill from her hand and disappeared into the crowd. Alice stood there, stunned, as the businessmen gave her confused looks. That $50 never made it to her apron. The next 3 hours were a nightmare. Mila intercepted her orders, claimed credit for her service, and made sure to lean over and whisper little reminders every time she passed. "You're so slow tonight. Jax is watching. Better step it up." By 11 p.m., Alice had made $23 in tips. On a Friday night, in the VIP section, $23. She was refilling water glasses at table 12 when she felt someone grab her arm. Hard, fingers digging into her skin right over the bruise from when Mila had accidentally bumped her into the storage room door last week. "We need to talk." Jax pulled her toward the back hallway, away from the cameras, away from witnesses. Alice's heart started racing. "Customers are complaining," he said once they were alone, "saying their server disappeared, saying they had to wait 20 minutes for drinks. That's because Mila—" "I don't want to hear it." Jax's voice was cold. "Mila's been covering for you all night, picking up your slack, and this is how you repay her? By making excuses?" Alice stared at him. The audacity of the lie took her breath away. "I've been working." "You've been useless." Jax stepped closer, and Alice could smell whiskey on his breath. "I'm giving you one last chance. There's a group coming in at midnight, big spenders. You're going to take care of them, you're going to smile, and you're going to make them happy. If you screw this up, you're fired, and I'll make sure no other club in this city hires you." Alice's blood ran cold. She needed this job, needed it more than air. "Understand?" Jax asked. "Yes." "Good." He released her arm, leaving red marks where his fingers had been. "Now get back to work." Alice returned to the floor, her arm throbbing, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. She caught Mila watching her from across the room, that satisfied smirk on her perfect face. At 11:58 p.m., the front door opened, and Do Hyun Kang walked in. Alice didn't know his name yet, didn't know anything about him except what her body told her in that first moment: danger. The music didn't stop, the crowd didn't part like in the movies, but something shifted in the air, something Alice felt in her bones before she understood it with her mind. He was tall, easily 6'2", with sharp features and dark hair swept back from his face. His suit probably cost more than Alice made in 6 months, black and perfectly tailored, but that's not what made people notice him. It was the way he moved, controlled, deliberate, like every step was calculated 3 moves ahead. And the tattoos. Even from across the room, Alice could see them creeping up from his collar, dark ink disappearing beneath expensive fabric. On his hands, too, intricate patterns that wrapped around his fingers like armor. 2 men flanked him, shorter but no less intimidating. They didn't look around nervously like most customers. They scanned, assessed, cataloged exits and threats with the kind of efficiency that made Alice's stomach tighten. Jax appeared instantly, smoothing his hair, straightening his tie. Alice had never seen him move so fast. He practically jogged across the floor, his usual swagger replaced with something that looked uncomfortably like fear disguised as respect. "Mr. Kang," Jax's voice was different too, higher. "We weren't expecting you tonight. Your usual table is occupied." Do Hyun's voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Smooth accent, Korean mixing with perfect English. "I can see. I'll have it cleared immediately. Just give me 2... Don't." Do Hyun finally looked at Jax, and Alice watched her manager actually flinch. "I'll take the corner booth." It wasn't a request. Of course, the corner booth. Perfect." Jax snapped his fingers at Alice without looking at her. "You, get over here." Alice's legs felt heavy as she crossed the floor. Every instinct screamed at her to go the other direction, to stay invisible, to avoid whatever this was. But she couldn't. Jax's threat still rang in her ears. "One more screw-up and you're fired." She stopped a few feet away, tray clutched to her chest like a shield. "This is Alice," Jax said, his hand suddenly on her shoulder, pushing her forward. "She'll be taking care of you tonight. Best server we have." That was a lie so blatant Alice almost laughed. Almost. Do Hyun looked at her then, really looked at her. Not the way men at the club usually looked at servers, that gross, hungry way that made Alice feel like meat. This was different, colder, more thorough, like he was reading a book written on her skin. His eyes lingered on her arm where Jax's fingers had left marks, then on her face, her tired eyes, the exhaustion she couldn't hide anymore. "Alice," he said, testing her name, "you look like you're about to fall over." It wasn't said cruelly, just observed, stated, like he'd commented on the weather. "I'm fine, sir. What can I get you?" "Whiskey. Yamazaki 18. Neat." He paused. "Bring 3 glasses." Alice nodded and turned to leave, but Jax's voice stopped her. "Make it fast. Mr. Kang doesn't like to wait." She practically ran to the bar, grateful for the excuse to escape. Her hands shook as she gave the order to Marcus, the bartender, who let out a low whistle when he heard the request. "Kang's here? Damn, that's a $300 bottle." "Who is he?" Alice asked. Marcus gave her a look like she'd just asked who the president was. "You serious? Girl, that's Do Hyun Kang, owns half the businesses in Koreatown, maybe more than half. Word is he's connected to some serious people." Connected how? The kind of connected you don't ask questions about. Marcus poured 3 measures of amber liquid into crystal glasses. "Keep your head down and your mouth shut, and for God's sake, don't spill anything." Alice carried the tray back, walking carefully through the crowd. By the time she reached the corner booth, Do Hyun was settled in the center seat, his 2 men on either side. They'd taken their jackets off, and Alice could see more tattoos, full sleeves, intricate work that probably had meanings she didn't want to know. She set the glasses down, one at a time, trying to keep her hands steady. "Thank you, Alice." The way he said her name made something cold slide down her spine, like he'd filed it away for later use. She nodded and backed away, but she could feel his eyes on her as she moved across the floor. For the next hour, every time she glanced toward the corner booth, Do-Yun was watching. Not obviously, not creepy, just aware, like he knew exactly where she was at all times. Around 1 a.m., Mila appeared at Alice's elbow. "Having fun with our special guest?" Mila's smile was poison. "Jack says you're doing such a good job, we should make things more interesting." "What are you talking about?" "Just a little game." Mila's fingers wrapped around Alice's wrist, her nails digging in. "To prove you're really committed to keeping this job." "Mila, I don't—" "Just go." "The guys at table 6 made a bet. They want to see if you're brave enough to sit on Mr. Kang's lap." She said it so casually, like she was asking Alice to refill a water glass. "You know, as a joke, to liven up the VIP section." Alice's blood turned to ice. "No." "No?" Mila's grip tightened. "That's funny, because Jack said if you refuse, that's insubordination, and we both know what happens then." "You can't be serious." "Dead serious, sweetie." Mila leaned in close, her breath hot against Alice's ear. "You go over there, you sit on his lap for like 5 seconds, everyone gets a laugh, and you keep your pathetic job. Or you refuse, and you're out on the street tonight. Your choice." Alice looked toward the corner booth. Do-Yun was leaning back in his seat, glass in hand, talking to the man on his left. He looked relaxed, powerful, dangerous. "I'll get fired anyway," Alice whispered. "He'll have me thrown out." "Maybe, maybe not," Mila shrugged. "Either way, it'll be hilarious. Now move." She shoved Alice forward. And Alice, with nowhere left to run and $150,000 in debt crushing her chest, walked toward Do-Yun Kang's table on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Every step felt like walking toward an execution. Alice could hear Mila behind her, could hear the table 6 guys laughing, could feel their phones coming out to record what they thought would be hilarious content. Her vision tunneled. The music faded. All she could see was Do-Hyun Tang, sitting in that corner booth like a king on a throne, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Or maybe he was aware. Maybe he knew everything. Those dark eyes seemed to know too much. 3 feet away, Alice stopped. She opened her mouth to say something, to apologize, to explain, to beg him not to have her killed for what she was about to do. But her throat was completely dry. No words came out. Do-Hyun looked up at her, one eyebrow slightly raised, waiting. That's when Mila struck. Alice felt hands, Mila's hands, slam into her back with brutal force. Not a push, a shove. Hard enough that Alice's feet left the ground for a split second, hard enough that she had no chance to catch herself, no chance to stop what was happening. She crashed into Do-Hyun's lap. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Her hands flew out instinctively, one landing on his chest, the other gripping his shoulder to keep from falling completely. She felt solid muscle beneath expensive fabric, felt the heat of his body, felt the world tilt sideways as her brain tried to process what had just happened. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds for Alice's body to collide with Do-Hyun Kang's lap, and the entire VIP lounge went ice cold. No laughter, no clinking champagne flutes, no whispered conversations. Even the bass from the club downstairs seemed to disappear. Alice froze. She could feel the hard muscle of his thighs beneath her, the heat radiating through his expensive suit. But what really made her breath catch was his hand, tattooed fingers wrapping slowly, deliberately around her waist to steady her. Strange thing was, his grip wasn't rough. That thought terrified her even more. Do-hyun Kang didn't move. No anger, no surprise, nothing. Just those coal-black eyes locked on her face, like he was memorizing every detail, every bruise Mila's nails had left on her arms, every tear she'd been holding back for the past 6 hours. Alice's stomach twisted into knots. You know that feeling when you realize you've just walked into something way bigger than a cruel prank? That something has shifted and you can't go back? That's what slammed into her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice came out broken, barely audible. "I'm so sorry, I didn't—" "Don't move." His voice was quiet, calm, but underneath that calm was something else, something that made the temperature in the room drop another 10 degrees. Alice didn't dare breathe. Do-hyun's eyes left her face and moved past her, scanning the room with the precision of a predator identifying threats. Alice watched his jaw tighten, watched something dark flicker across his expression. His hand stayed on her waist, not gripping hard enough to hurt, but firm enough that she knew she wasn't going anywhere until he decided to let her go. Behind her, Mila's voice dripped with fake innocence. "Oops! My bad." Then came the flash of a phone camera, multiple phones. Perfect. Now they had evidence. The trap Jax and Mila set had just snapped shut, exactly like they planned. Alice felt tears burning behind her eyes. This was it. She was fired. Worse than fired. The man whose lap she was sitting on probably had people who made problems disappear, and she'd just become a very embarrassing problem. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. The foreclosure notice, the medication, everything she'd been fighting for, gone because of a cruel joke and her own desperation. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, trying to pull away. "Please, I'll just—" "I said don't move." Do-hyun's grip tightened slightly. Not painful, but immovable. His eyes found hers again, and for a second Alice saw something unexpected there. Not anger, not disgust. Something colder, more calculating. "Who pushed you?" Alice's throat closed up. If she told the truth, Mila would destroy her. If she lied, this man would know. She could see it in his eyes. He'd know. "Alice." The way he said her name was different now. Not casual, deliberate. "Who pushed you?" Before she could answer, Jax appeared, his face a mask of false concern and barely concealed panic. "Mr. Kang, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. Alice, get off of him right—" "She stays." Do-hyun didn't look at Jax, didn't even acknowledge him. His eyes stayed locked on Alice's face. "Until I say otherwise." Jax's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Sir, I really think—" "I don't care what you think." Now Do-hyun did look at Jax, and Alice felt the man beside her go completely still. "Leave." "But—" "Leave, before I decide this establishment isn't worth my patronage anymore." That threat hit Jax like a physical blow. Alice watched the blood drain from her manager's face. Everyone in the VIP section had gone silent, watching, waiting. Even the guys from table 6 had stopped laughing. Jax backed away slowly, hands raised in surrender. Of course, Mr. Kang, whatever you need." He disappeared into the crowd, and Alice was left alone on Do-hyun Kang's lap, his hand still on her waist, his eyes still reading her face like a book he was determined to finish. "You're shaking," he observed. Alice was. She couldn't stop. Her whole body trembled like she was freezing, even though the club was hot and stuffy, and she could feel sweat on the back of her neck. "I'm sorry," she said for the third time, because what else could she say? "Stop apologizing." Do-yeon's thumb moved slightly against her waist, a small gesture that somehow felt both comforting and terrifying. "You didn't push yourself." "I should have refused." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "And lost your job? I heard your manager's threat. I hear everything in places like this." Alice stared at him. He'd known. He'd been listening, watching the whole time. "I'm going to let you go now," Do-yeon said quietly. "But first, I need you to answer a question, and I need you to answer honestly, because I don't like lies and I'm very good at spotting them." Alice nodded, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Do you need this job?" Such a simple question, such a devastating answer. "Yes," Alice whispered, "more than anything." Do-yeon studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he released her waist and helped her stand, with a gentleness that completely contradicted everything else about him. "Then go take your break," he said quietly. "You look like you need it." Alice stumbled backward, her legs weak, her mind spinning. She expected him to call security, to have her dragged out, but Do-yeon just picked up his whiskey glass and took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving hers. "And Alice," Do-yeon said as she turned to leave, "find me before your shift ends. We need to talk." Alice locked herself in the staff bathroom for exactly 7 minutes. She counted every second, watching the numbers change on her phone screen while she gripped the sink and tried to remember how to breathe. 7 minutes was all she could afford. Any longer and Jax would come looking for her, would add it to his list of reasons why she deserved to be fired. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Dark circles under her eyes, lips pressed into a thin line, hair falling out of her ponytail, and her arms. She looked down at her arms and finally saw what Do-yeon Kang must have seen. Bruises. Not just from tonight, though Mila's fingerprints were clearly visible, 5 dark marks on her left arm where she'd been grabbed and shoved. But there were others too, older ones. Yellow-green shadows from last week, when Jax had yanked her into the storage room. Purple smudges from the week before, when Mila had accidentally slammed the freezer door on her arm. Alice had stopped noticing them, had stopped caring. They were just part of the job now, part of what it cost to keep her mother's medication filled and the foreclosure notice hidden in her glove compartment. But Do-yeon had noticed. In the 3 seconds she'd been on his lap, in the chaos of humiliation and fear, he'd seen what she'd trained herself to ignore. Alice splashed cold water on her face and straightened her apron. 7 minutes were up. Time to go back out there and pretend her world hadn't just tilted off its axis. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Mila stayed away from her, which was somehow more unnerving than her usual torment. Jax avoided looking at her completely, which meant he was either planning something or genuinely afraid of what Do-yeon Kang might do if Alice was mistreated again. The corner booth stayed occupied all night. Do-yeon and his men drank slowly, talked quietly, and watched. Alice felt his gaze on her constantly, tracking her movements across the floor with an intensity that should have felt threatening, but somehow didn't. It felt like being studied, assessed, measured for something she didn't understand yet. At 2:47 a.m., the club started emptying out. Alice was clearing glasses from table 9 when she felt someone stop beside her. Not Mila, not Jax, one of Do-yeon's men, the one with the scar above his left eyebrow. "Boss wants to see you," he said in Korean accented English. "Downstairs, wine cellar, 5 minutes." He walked away before Alice could respond. Her hands shook as she finished clearing the table. The wine cellar. private, away from cameras, away from witnesses. Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea, that she should run, that nothing good happened in dark basements with powerful men. But Do-Yun had asked her a question earlier. Do you need this job? And she'd answered honestly, more than anything. So Alice set down her tray, told Marcus she was taking inventory, and walked toward the stairs that led to the lower level. The wine cellar was exactly what it sounded like, a converted basement filled with expensive bottles and dim lighting. The temperature dropped 10 degrees as Alice descended the concrete steps, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Do-Yun was waiting for her. He stood near the back wall, examining a bottle of wine he'd pulled from the rack. His jacket was off now, draped over a chair, and Alice could see the full extent of his tattoos, intricate designs that covered both arms, disappearing under his rolled-up sleeves. Dragons and flowers and symbols she didn't recognize, all woven together in black and gray ink. He looked up when she entered. "You came. I told you to. That's not the same as choosing to come." Do-Yun set the bottle down carefully. "You could have run, could have clocked out early, disappeared into the night. Part of me expected you to." Alice wrapped her arms around her, suddenly very cold she was. "I can't afford to run." "No, you can't." He moved toward her slowly, deliberately, giving her time to back away if she wanted. But Alice held her ground. She was too tired to run, too defeated to be afraid anymore. Do-Yun stopped a few feet away and studied her face for a long moment. Then, gently, he reached for her left arm. Alice flinched, but didn't pull away. His fingers were warm as they turned her arm, exposing the bruises to the dim light. He traced them carefully, his touch so light it almost tickled. "These are from tonight," he said, indicating Mila's handprints. Then he moved to the older bruises. "These are older, days, maybe a week." His eyes met hers. "How long has this been happening?" Alice's throat tightened. "I don't know what you—" "Don't lie to me, Alice." His voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. "I told you I don't like lies. How long have they been hurting you?" The question, asked so directly and with such quiet certainty, broke something inside her. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe it was the relief of finally being seen, maybe it was just that she had nothing left to lose. 6 months, she whispered, "since I started." Do-Yun's jaw tightened. "And your manager allows this?" "My manager encourages it. Mila's dating his cousin. I'm nobody. I need the job, so I take it." "Because you're in debt." It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew. Alice wondered what else he'd figured out just from watching her for a few hours. "Yes." "How much?" Alice hesitated. This felt dangerous, admitting her weakness to someone like him. But he was still holding her arm, still tracing those bruises with a gentleness that made her chest ache. 150,000, she said quietly. "Medical bills for my mother. I took out a loan against our house, and now—" her voice cracked. "Now we're going to lose everything." Do-Yun released her arm and stepped back. He pulled a silver case from his pocket, extracted a business card, and held it out to her. "You're smart. I watched you tonight. The way you move through the club, the way you notice things others miss, the way you survive in a place designed to break you." He paused. "That takes a particular kind of strength." Alice took the card with trembling fingers. It was simple, elegant, just a name and a phone number. "I don't understand." "You're invisible to them, your manager, your coworker, the customers. They don't see you as a person, just as furniture, a tool." His dark eyes locked onto hers. "That invisibility is valuable to someone like me." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I can make your debt disappear." He said it casually, like he was offering to buy her coffee. "All of it. Your house saved. Your mother's medication covered. Everything." Alice's heart started hammering. "In exchange for what?" Doyen smiled. It was the first real smile he'd seen from him, and it was terrifying. "Your eyes and ears," he said. "This club is owned by people I'm interested in, people who think they're untouchable. I need someone on the inside, someone they'll never suspect." He tilted his head. "Someone invisible." Alice stared at him. "You want me to spy for you?" He corrected. "I want you to work for me, and in return, I'll give you your life back." It was a trap. It had to be. People like Doyen Kong didn't make offers like this without strings attached, without hidden costs that would destroy her worse than any debt ever could. But as she stood there in that cold wine cellar, looking at the business card in her hand, Alice thought about her mother, about the foreclosure notice, about 6 more months of Mila's abuse and Jax's threats, and slowly dying inside. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Doyen's smile widened. "For now, just listen. Pay attention. Tell me what you see and hear in this club." He leaned closer. "And Alice, don't tell anyone about this conversation. Not your manager, not your coworker, no one. Or what? Or I'll assume you're not trustworthy enough to invest in." His voice was soft, almost kind. "I only invest in people I can trust." Alice looked down at the card again, at the phone number that could save her mother's house or destroy her completely. "Call me tomorrow," Doyen said. "We'll discuss details." Then he walked past her, up the stairs, leaving Alice alone in the wine cellar with a business card and a choice that felt like no choice at all. Alice didn't go home right away. She sat in her car in the empty parking lot, the engine off, the business card resting on her dashboard like a loaded gun. 3:47 a.m. The club had closed, the staff had scattered. She was alone with the weight of Do-hyun Kang's offer pressing down on her chest. $150,000, just gone, erased, like magic. Except it wasn't magic. It was a deal with the devil, or someone close enough to the devil that the difference didn't matter. Alice picked up the card, turning it over in her fingers. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind of card that cost more to print than Alice made in a day. On the back, handwritten in precise black ink, were 3 words: "Tomorrow, noon, call." She thought about her mother, probably asleep right now in her wheelchair-accessible bedroom, trusting that her daughter had everything under control, trusting that the house was safe, that the bills were paid, that her medication would be there when she needed it. Alice had been lying to her for 6 months. But if she made this call, if she took Do-hyun's offer, she wouldn't have to lie anymore. Not about the money, at least. Everything else, what she'd have to do, who she'd be working for, the danger she'd be walking into, that would require a whole new set of lies. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "Can't sleep. You home safe?" Alice's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could type the truth. "No, Mom, I'm sitting in a parking lot deciding whether to become a spy for a Korean mafia boss." She could imagine her mother's face, the disappointment, the fear. Instead, she typed, "Just left, be home in 20, love you." The lie came easily now, too easily. Alice started the car, it coughed twice before the engine caught, and drove home through empty streets. The city looked different at 4 in the morning, quieter, lonelier, like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see what choice she'd make. She got home at 4:12 a.m. Her mother's light was off, thank God. Alice moved quietly through their tiny converted garage apartment, past the hospital bed they'd had to rent, past the wheelchair, past all the medical equipment that had slowly turned their home into something that resembled a hospice. In her bedroom, if you could call the corner space behind a curtain a bedroom, Alice collapsed onto her mattress on the floor and stared at the ceiling. She should sleep, should rest, should prepare for tomorrow's shift and whatever fresh hell Mila and Jax had planned. But her mind kept replaying the wine cellar, Do-hyun's fingers on her arm, his voice quiet and certain. That invisibility is valuable to someone like me. He'd seen her, really seen her, not as a victim or a servant or something to abuse for entertainment. He'd seen her as someone useful, someone with value. That should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first time in 6 months that anyone had looked at her and seen a person. Alice didn't sleep. She watched the sky turn from black to deep blue to pale gray through her small window. She listened to her mother's breathing through the thin walls. She thought about foreclosure notices and bruises and the way Do-hyun Kang had traced her scars like he was reading Braille. At 6:15 a.m., she made her decision. At 11:58 a.m., Alice stood outside a coffee shop 3 blocks from the club, her phone in her hand, Do-hyun's card in her other hand. She'd practiced what to say, had run through a dozen different opening lines, had convinced herself she could do this. But now, staring at the number, her courage faltered. This was insane. She didn't even know what Do-hyun really wanted, didn't know what listening and paying attention actually meant, didn't know what would happen if she got caught, if Jax found out, if his people decided she was a liability. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number, a text. The corner table, inside. Alice's head snapped up. Through the coffee shop window, she could see him. Do-hyun sat at a small table in the back corner, dressed casually today in dark jeans and a simple black t-shirt that somehow still looked expensive. No bodyguards visible, though Alice suspected they were nearby. He was watching her through the window, waiting. Alice took a breath and walked inside. The coffee shop smelled like espresso and cinnamon. There were maybe 6 other people scattered around, all absorbed in their laptops or phones. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that the man in the corner booth probably had more power in his pinky finger than they'd have in their entire existence. Alice slid into the seat across from him. "You were watching me. I wanted to see if you'd come," Do-hyun said. He pushed a cup toward her. "Latte, 2 sugars. You look like you need the caffeine." Alice stared at the cup. He'd already ordered for her, already assumed she'd show up. The confidence should have been arrogant, but instead it just felt inevitable, like he'd known her choice before she'd made it. "I haven't decided yet," she said, even though that was a lie. "Yes, you have." Do-hyun leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "You decided the moment I told you I could erase your debt. Everything after that was just you convincing yourself it was a real choice." Alice hated that he was right. "You don't know me." "I know enough." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward her. "Alice Marie Johnson, 24 years old. Mother is Caroline Johnson, age 56, disabled after a stroke in 2023. Father deceased, 2019, pancreatic cancer. Current debt, $147,632 as of this morning." He paused. "Should I continue?" Alice's blood ran cold. "How did you—" "I'm thorough." Do-hyun set his phone down. "Before I invest in someone, I learn everything about them, their debts, their weaknesses, their pressures." His eyes met hers. "Their breaking points." "That's—" Alice struggled to find words. "That's invasive." "That's business." Do-hyun picked up his own coffee. "I need to know you won't betray me, that you're desperate enough to be loyal and smart enough to be useful. And if I'm not? Then we finish our coffee and never speak again." He took a sip, watching her over the rim. "And in 90 days, you lose your mother's house." There it was, the truth laid bare, no pretense, no softening the blow. Alice picked up the latte he'd bought her. It was perfect, exactly how she liked it, which meant he'd watched her at the club, had noticed how she made her coffee during breaks. The observation should have creeped her out. Instead, it just confirmed what she already knew. Do-hyun Kang didn't miss anything. "What exactly do you want me to do?" she asked. The Velvet Room is owned by a man named Marcus Chen. He runs it as a front for money laundering, drugs, weapons, occasionally human trafficking. Do-hyun spoke casually, like he was discussing the weather. He answers to the Sakura Syndicate, an Japanese organization that's been expanding into Korean territory. I need to know what they're planning, who they're meeting with, when shipments come through. Alice's hands tightened around her cup. That sounds dangerous. It is. Do-hyun didn't sugarcoat it. But you're already invisible to them. You've spent 6 months being ignored, abused, treated like furniture. Now we use that. He leaned forward. You continue working your shifts. You serve drinks, you clean tables, and you pay attention to the VIP section. Who meets with who, what they talk about, when they disappear into the back offices. And if they catch me? They won't, because you're not going to do anything obvious. No recording devices, no photographs, just your eyes and your memory. He paused. And if somehow they do suspect you, I'll get you out. You promise that? I don't make promises I can't keep. Do-hyun's expression was unreadable. But I protect my investments. You're more valuable to me alive and functional than dead or damaged. Alice wanted to find comfort in that, but couldn't. She was an investment, a tool, just like she'd been to Jax and Mila, except this time the person using her was honest about it. What about my debt? How does that work? Do-hyun pulled out another card, this one a sleek black credit card, and slid it across the table. There's 200,000 on this card. Use it to pay off your loan, your mother's medical bills, whatever else you need. Consider the extra 50,000 a signing bonus. Alice stared at the card like it might bite her. Just like that? Just like that. Do-hyun finished his coffee and stood. I'll text you instructions, usually simple things. Watch this person, listen to that conversation. You report back to me twice a week, more if something urgent comes up. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Alice. Once you take that card, you're mine. Not Jax's, not Mila's, mine. His voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. You don't quit, you don't betray me, you don't tell anyone about our arrangement. Break any of those rules and the debt comes back, with interest. Alice picked up the black card with shaking fingers. It was heavier than she expected. And if I do everything right? She asked. Then in 6 months we renegotiate. Maybe you stay on, maybe you walk away free and clear. Do-hyun's eyes held hers. But for now, you belong to me. He walked out of the coffee shop, leaving Alice alone with a black card worth $200,000 and the sinking realization that she'd just sold her soul to save her mother's house. The first text came 3 days later. Alice was restocking wine glasses in the VIP section when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A single line from an unknown number. Manager's office. Tonight. Place this under his desk. Attached was a photo of what looked like a small black disc, maybe the size of a quarter. Innocent. Harmless. Except Alice knew exactly what it was. A listening device. Her hands shook as she typed back, "How am I supposed to get in there?" The response came immediately. You're invisible, remember? Find a way. Alice deleted both messages and slipped her phone back into her pocket. Around her, the club was starting to fill up with the usual Friday night crowd. Music pulsed through the speakers. Customers laughed and drank and never once looked at the waitress restocking glasses. Invisible. That's what Do-hyun had called her, and he was right. 6 months of working here, and most customers couldn't pick her out of a lineup. She was just part of the scenery, background noise in their expensive nights out. Now she had to use that. At 9:47 p.m., Alice made her move. Jax was in the VIP section, schmoozing with a group of businessmen who'd ordered 3 bottles of Dom Perignon. Mila was working the main floor, her attention focused on a table of young tech guys who were tipping well. The timing would never be better. Alice grabbed a cleaning caddy and walked toward the back hallway like she'd done 100 times before, past the bathrooms, past the storage room, past the employee break area, to the door at the very end with the cheap nameplate that read, Management. She knocked once. No answer. Good. The door was locked, but Alice had learned months ago that Jax kept the spare key taped under the fire extinguisher mount. She'd discovered it by accident when she was cleaning, had filed the information away without knowing why. Now she knew why. Do-hyun was right. She did notice things others missed. The key was exactly where she remembered. Alice's heart hammered as she unlocked the door and slipped inside, closing it quietly behind her. Jax's office was small and cluttered, papers everywhere, an ancient computer, a mini fridge filled with beer. It smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap cologne. Alice pulled out her phone and found the photo Do-hyun had sent. The listening device was waiting for her tonight. Do-hyun's text had included an address, a convenience store 3 blocks away, a locker number, and code. She'd picked it up an hour before her shift. The small black disc hidden now in her closed fist. Under the desk, that's what he'd said. Alice dropped to her knees and crawled under the cramped space. It was dark, dusty, and she could see old coffee stains on the carpet. Her fingers found the underside of the desk, feeling along the wood until she found a spot that felt right, hidden but not too hidden, where a bug could pick up conversations clearly.
The device had adhesive backing. Alice peeled it off and pressed the disc firmly against the wood. It held. Perfect. She was about to crawl back out when she heard voices in the hallway. Alice froze, her heart stopping completely. The voices were getting closer. One was definitely Jax. She'd recognize that condescending tone anywhere. But the other voice was female. Familiar. Mila. Need to move faster, Mila was saying. Chen's getting impatient. He wants the shipment confirmed by Monday or he's pulling out. Tell Chen to relax, Jax replied. Everything's on schedule. The Koreans don't suspect anything. Alice's blood turned to ice. The Koreans. They were talking about Do-hyun's people. The door handle turned. Alice didn't think. She rolled sideways, pressing herself against the side of the desk where the shadows were deepest, where the clutter and boxes created a small blind spot. The door opened. Light from the hallway spilled in. Alice held her breath, her body completely still, every muscle locked. Jax walked in first, Mila right behind him. Through a gap in the boxes, Alice could see their feet. Jax's expensive loafers, Mila's stiletto heels. We just need to be careful, Mila said, her voice different now, professional, cold, nothing like the petty bully Alice knew. The Sakura Syndicate doesn't tolerate mistakes, and if word gets back to the Kang family that we're facilitating their rivals, it won't, Jax interrupted, because nobody here knows anything. The staff are idiots, the customers are too drunk to notice, and Chen's covering our tracks. Mila laughed, a sound that made Alice's skin crawl. Speaking of idiots, how's our little punching bag doing? Alice still showing up for her shifts? Every single one. Desperate little thing. Jax's voice dripped with contempt. She'll take whatever we dish out because she needs the money. Makes her perfect for the job. You think she suspects anything? Her? Please. That girl can barely keep her table straight. She's not smart enough to connect any dots. Alice's jaw clenched so hard her teeth hurt. She wanted to scream, to jump out and confront them, to shove that smug confidence down their throats. But she stayed frozen, invisible, exactly what they thought she was. Still, Mila said slowly, we should keep an eye on her. Chen's paranoid about plants. If anyone's watching this place. Nobody's watching, and even if they were, they'd never use someone like Alice. Jax moved toward his desk, and Alice pressed herself even flatter against the floor. Then his phone rang. Yeah, Jax answered, his voice sharp. A pause. No, I said Monday. Monday. Don't call me again until... He cursed and stomped toward the door. Fine, I'm coming down. The door slammed behind him, lock clicking into place from the outside.
Alice waited 3 seconds, then a minute. Then she finally allowed herself to breathe, to move, to crawl out from under that desk on shaking hands and knees. She'd done it, planted the bug, and discovered something even more valuable than what Do-yoon had asked for. Mila wasn't just a bully, she was working for the Sakura Syndicate, for Do-yoon's rivals, and she was using the club to facilitate something that would hurt the Kang family. Alice pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and typed a message to Do-yoon's number. Bug placed, but you need to know something about Mila. The response came back almost immediately. Tell me everything, but not here. The address I'm sending, be there in 1 hour. Alice deleted the messages, replaced the key under the fire extinguisher, and walked back to the VIP section like nothing had happened. Her heart was still racing, her hands were still shaking, but on her face was the same tired, defeated expression she always wore. Invisible Alice, too stupid to connect any dots, a non-factor. Perfect. Mila glanced at her when she returned to the floor, suspicion flickering across her perfect face for just a moment, but then a customer called for her attention and Alice was forgotten again, exactly as planned. 1 hour later, Alice would tell Do-yoon Kang everything she'd heard, and the game would change completely. The meeting with Do-hyun lasted 20 minutes. He'd listened to everything, about Mila, about the Sakura Syndicate, about the shipment Chen was expecting by Monday, with that same unreadable expression he always wore. No surprise, no anger, just cold calculation as he processed each piece of information like data points in some larger equation Alice couldn't see. When she finished, he'd simply nodded and said, "You did well." Then he'd given her instructions for what came next, instructions that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Now, 4 days later, Alice stood outside Jax's office during the Tuesday afternoon shift, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The envelope in her hands felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She knocked twice. "Come in," Jax's voice called from inside. Alice pushed open the door. Jax was sitting at his desk, the same desk where she'd planted the bug, where she'd hidden and listened to him call her stupid, worthless, a non-factor. He looked up, irritation already crossing his face. "What do you want, Alice? I'm busy." "I need to talk to you." Alice's voice came out steadier than she expected. "About my employment." Jax leaned back in his chair, a smirk spreading across his face. "Finally ready to quit? Smart move. Save me the trouble of firing you." "No," Alice stepped forward and placed the envelope on his desk. "I'm giving you my 2 weeks' notice, professional courtesy, since I'll be transitioning to a different position." Jax stared at the envelope like it was a dead rat. "What position? Nobody else is going to hire you, sweetheart. You're barely competent here." Alice didn't flinch, didn't react. She'd practiced this moment in her head a dozen times. "I've been offered a management position. Better pay, better hours, better protection." Something shifted in Jax's expression, suspicion replacing smugness. "Protection? What the hell does that mean?" "It means I have people watching out for me now." Alice kept her voice calm, neutral. "People who've taken an interest in my career development." Jax's eyes narrowed. "You're lying." "Am I?" Alice pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. She turned the screen toward him, showing a balance that made his face go pale. "That's what protection looks like. That's what happens when the right people notice you." The number on the screen was staggering, more money than Jax probably made in 6 months, more money than Alice had ever seen in her life until Do-hyun's black card made it appear. "Where did you—" Jax stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Who gave you that money?" "Does it matter?" Alice pocketed her phone. "The point is, I'm not your punching bag anymore. I'm done being invisible, done being treated like garbage." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And the people backing me now, they don't appreciate how you and Mila have been treating their investment." Jax's face went from pale to red. "You threatening me?" No, Alice's voice was ice. I'm informing you. There's a difference. She turned to leave, but Jax moved fast, grabbing her arm, the same arm Mila had bruised, the same arm Do-hyun had traced with such careful attention. His grip was hard, painful, meant to intimidate. You little... The office door opened. One of Do-hyun's men stood in the doorway, the same one with the scar above his eyebrow who'd summoned her to the wine cellar. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. His presence alone was a statement. Jax released Alice's arm like it had burned him. "Everything okay here?" the man asked in that thick Korean accent, his eyes fixed on Jax with the kind of stare that promised violence. "Everything's fine," Alice said calmly. "I was just leaving." She walked past Do-hyun's man and out into the hallway. Behind her, she could hear Jax's breathing, fast and panicked, could feel his eyes on her back, reassessing everything he thought he knew about invisible, stupid, worthless Alice. The power shift was complete. 20 minutes later, Alice was in the break room when Mila found her. "Heard you had an interesting conversation with Jax. Want to tell me what that was about?" Mila stood in the doorway, arms crossed, that perfect blonde hair pulled back tight. She looked exactly as always, beautiful, confident, dangerous. But Alice saw her differently now, saw the Sakura Syndicate operative underneath the mean girl facade. "Just giving my notice," Alice said, "moving on to better opportunities." "Better opportunities?" Mila's laugh was sharp. "Right, and I'm supposed to believe someone actually wants to hire you?" "Believe what you want," Alice stood, gathering her things. "Doesn't change the facts." Mila moved closer, lowering her voice. "I don't know what game you're playing, Alice, but whatever it is, whatever you think you've gotten yourself into, is none of your business." Alice met her eyes directly. No fear, no backing down. Not anymore. For the first time since Alice had known her, Mila looked uncertain, thrown off balance. She opened her mouth to say something else, but Alice was already walking past her, out of the break room, back to the floor. The rest of the shift passed in a strange fog. Customers came and went, drinks were served, tables were cleared, but everything felt different. The other staff members were looking at Alice differently now, whispering, wondering. Who was she really? Where did that money come from? Who were those men in expensive suits who'd started appearing whenever Jax or Mila got too close to her? Alice played her part perfectly, quiet, unassuming, still invisible in all the ways that mattered, but now there was an edge underneath, a warning, touch me and find out what happens. At the end of her shift, Alice found an envelope in her locker. Inside was a note in Do-hyun's precise handwriting. "Well done. The chess pieces are moving. Your next assignment tomorrow."
Alice tucked the note into her pocket and headed for the parking lot. Her car was still a rust bucket that coughed when it started. Her apartment was still a converted garage. Her mother still needed medication and care. But the foreclosure notice was gone. Burned in her kitchen sink 2 days ago, after she'd called the loan company and paid off every cent of the debt. The woman on the phone had sounded shocked when Alice confirmed the amount. $147,632. Gone. Erased. Like it had never existed. Alice had cried after that call, sat on her bathroom floor and sobbed with relief so intense it physically hurt. Her mother's house was safe. The medication was covered. The crushing weight that had been destroying her for 6 months had simply disappeared. But it hadn't disappeared. It had just changed shape. Now, instead of owing money to a predatory loan company, she owed her loyalty to Do-hyun Kang, owed him information, discretion, obedience, owed him her invisibility weaponized for his purposes. Was it better? Was it worse? Alice didn't know. But as she drove home through the dark streets, she thought about Jax's face when he'd seen that balance, thought about Mila's uncertainty when Alice hadn't backed down,
thought about 6 months of bruises and humiliation and being treated like she didn't matter. And she smiled. The old Alice would have been ashamed of that smile. The old Alice would have felt guilty about becoming someone's spy, about lying and manipulating and playing dangerous games with dangerous people. But the old Alice was gone, buried under the weight of a debt she could never have paid on her own, killed by every cruel word and stolen tip and accidental shove. This new Alice, Do-Yun's Alice, was something different, something harder, something that scared her a little bit, but something that could survive. And right now, survival was enough. The address Do-Yun sent her was in the most expensive part of the city. Alice had driven past this neighborhood before, the kind of place with doormen and valet parking and apartment buildings that looked more like luxury hotels. She'd never imagined she'd have any reason to be here, never imagined she'd belong in a place where parking spaces probably cost more than her monthly rent. But here she was, pulling her rust bucket Honda up to the front entrance of the Apex, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that stretched 40 stories into the night sky. The valet, a young guy in a crisp uniform, looked at her car like she'd driven up in a garbage truck. "I'm here to see Do-Yun Kang," Alice said, stepping out before he could tell her to move along. The valet's expression changed instantly, fear mixed with respect. "Penthouse level. The elevator requires a key card. I'll call up." He pulled out a phone, spoke rapidly in Korean, then nodded at Alice. "You're cleared. Top floor. Mr. Kang is expecting you." Alice walked through the lobby, all marble floors and modern art, and the kind of quiet that only existed where wealth lived. The elevator was mirrored on all sides, and as the doors closed, Alice caught sight of herself, still wearing her club uniform under her jacket, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes from too many late shifts and not enough sleep. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl from the wrong side of the city playing in a world way above her pay grade. The elevator rose smoothly, silently. Floor numbers ticked by. 10, 20, 30, 40. Then it stopped. The doors opened directly into Do-Yun's penthouse. Alice stepped out into a space that made her breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire apartment, offering a panoramic view of the city that looked like something from a movie. The furniture was minimalist and expensive, all clean lines and dark wood and leather. Modern art hung on the walls. Everything was perfect, controlled, just like the man who lived here. Do-Yun stood by the windows, his back to her, hands in his pockets. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing those intricate tattoos that covered his forearms. For a moment, he didn't turn around, just stood there silhouetting against the city lights like he owned every single one of them. Maybe he did. "You're punctual," he said without turning. "I appreciate that." "I'm here at 8 o'clock." Alice's voice sounded small in the vast space. "I'm here at 8 o'clock." Most people would have been late, would have made excuses about traffic or getting lost. Now he turned, and those dark eyes found hers across the room. "You're not most people, are you, Alice?" Alice didn't know how to answer that. A week ago, she would have said she was exactly like most people, struggling, invisible, unremarkable. But standing here in this penthouse, working as a spy for a man who could probably buy and sell lives with a phone call, she wasn't sure what she was anymore. "I brought the information you asked for," she said, pulling out her phone. "From the bug. There's a meeting scheduled for Friday night. Chen's meeting with someone from the Sakura Syndicate. They mentioned a shipment coming through the port of Oakland." Do-Yun moved toward her, and Alice had to fight the urge to step back, not because she was afraid, though maybe she should be, but because his presence was overwhelming in a way she couldn't quite explain. He took her phone, scrolled through her notes with quick efficiency, then handed it back. "Good, very good. This confirms what my other sources have been telling me." He paused. You've exceeded expectations, Alice. In less than a week, you've provided more useful intelligence than some of my people have gathered in months. Alice should have felt proud. Instead, she felt the weight of what that meant settling onto her shoulders like a physical thing. I also noticed something else, she said carefully. Mila's been acting strange since our conversation, more paranoid. She's watching me now. Let her watch. Doyen's smile was cold. Paranoid people make mistakes, and when she makes one, we'll be ready. He walked to a bar cart in the corner and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Expensive stuff, probably the kind that cost more per bottle than Alice used to make in a month. He handed her one. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. Alice stared at the amber liquid. This felt ceremonial somehow, final, like once she drank this, there was no going back. She raised her glass and drank. The whiskey burned going down, smooth and fierce at the same time. Do-yun watched her over the rim of his own glass, those calculating eyes missing nothing. Your mother doesn't know, does she, about any of this? Alice's hand tightened around her glass. No. And you won't tell her? It wasn't a question, but Alice answered anyway. She thinks I got a promotion. Better pay, better hours. She doesn't need to know the rest. Good. Do-yun set his glass down. The best lies are the ones wrapped in truth. You did get a promotion. You are making better money. Everything else is just details. He moved closer, and Alice found herself holding very still as he reached out and took her chin gently between his fingers, tilting her face to the light. His touch was careful, almost clinical, as he examined her face. The bruises are fading. Good. Can't have my associate looking like she's been in a fight. Your associate, Alice tested the words. Is that what I am? That's what you are now. Do-yun released her chin but didn't step back. Not a waitress, not a victim, not invisible anymore. You work for me. You report to me. You belong to me. The last words sent a chill down Alice's spine. I'm not your property. No, Do-yun agreed. You're my investment. There's a difference. Property can be discarded when it's no longer useful. Investments are protected, cultivated, valued. His eyes held hers. As long as you remain valuable, Alice, you'll have everything you need. Protection, money, power, respect. And if I stop being valuable, then we'll renegotiate our arrangement. His smile didn't reach his eyes. But I don't think that's going to happen. You're too smart, too hungry, too willing to do what's necessary to survive. He was right, and Alice hated that he was right, hated that he could see through her so easily, could read her motivations like they were written on her skin. I saved my mother's house, Alice said quietly. That's what I wanted. That's all I wanted. Is it? Do-yun tilted his head. Then why are you still here? The debt's paid. You could walk away. Go back to being invisible Alice who serves drinks and gets pushed around. He paused. But you won't, because you've tasted something different now, something better. Alice wanted to deny it, wanted to say she was only here out of obligation, out of debt, out of fear of what would happen if she refused. But standing in this penthouse, wearing clothes that didn't smell like spilled alcohol, looking at a man who saw her as valuable instead of disposable, she couldn't deny it. What happens now? She asked instead. Now you continue working at the club, continue gathering information, continue being my eyes and ears in places I can't reach. Do-yun returned to the windows, looking over the city he clearly considered his kingdom. Friday's meeting is crucial. I need you there. I need you watching. And when the time comes, I need you ready to move. Where? Alice asked. Away from the club, away from Jax and Mila and that life. He turned back to her. You've proven yourself, Alice. In 6 months, maybe sooner, you'll transition to working for me full-time. Better assignments, higher stakes, more money than you've ever imagined. Alice's mouth went dry. And if I don't want that? Then you're free to leave after our agreed-upon time. Do-yun's expression was unreadable. But I don't think you'll want to leave. I think you'll realize that this, he gestured to the penthouse, to the city, to everything his world represented, is where you belong now. He walked her to the elevator, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, professional, possessive, a reminder of who was in control. One more thing, Do-yun said as the elevator doors opened. The woman who hurt you, who treated you like garbage, who thought you were nothing, she's going to pay for that. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Alice looked up at him. Mila? All of them. His smile was razor sharp. People who underestimate you tend to regret it, and I make sure those regrets are comprehensive. The elevator doors started to close, but Do-yun held them open for one more moment. Welcome to your new life, Alice. I think you're going to like it here. The doors closed, the elevator descended, and Alice watched her reflection in the mirrored walls. This girl who'd sold her soul to save her mother's house, who'd become a spy for a mafia boss, who'd transformed from victim to player in a game she was only beginning to understand. Her mother's house was saved, the debt was gone, the bruises were fading. But Do-yun was right about one thing, her life belonged to him now, and the terrifying part, she wasn't sure she minded anymore.
Sometimes the people who push you to your breaking point don't realize they're creating something dangerous. They think they're breaking you down, but really, they're just teaching you how much you can survive, how far you're willing to go, what you're capable of becoming when you've got nothing left to lose. Alice walked into that club invisible, desperate, and drowning. She walked out belonging to a man more dangerous than her debts ever were. Was it a rescue? Was it a trap? Maybe it was both. Maybe that's what survival looks like when you're out of options and the only hand reaching down to pull you up has blood on it. The truth is, we all make deals we can't take back. We all cross lines we swore we'd never cross. And sometimes, the person you become on the other side of desperation is someone you don't even recognize in the mirror. But she's still standing, and that counts for something. If this story grabbed you by the throat and didn't let go, hit that subscribe button, because there are more stories where this came from. Stories about people who refuse to stay down, who trade one kind of cage for another, who learn that power always costs something. And the question isn't whether you'll pay the price, it's whether you can live with yourself after you do. I'm here every week with stories that dig deep, hit hard, and don't apologize for it. Stories about survival, transformation, and the complicated gray spaces between right and wrong. Because the best stories aren't about heroes and villains. They're about people doing whatever it takes. And sometimes, whatever it takes changes everything. Until next time, stay dangerous. Silent Speaks Story, where every story leaves a mark.